Hello and welcome to another episode of Ethical Exposé.
In an era where the pursuit of truth intertwines with the ethical labyrinth of journalism, our focus for today lies within the intricate complexities of one of the most pressing societal issues of our time, the Israel and Palestine conflict as depicted in the 2002 PBS documentary Shattered Dreams of Peace, Israeli-Palestinian Relations After Oslo by Dan Seton and Tor Ben Meyer.
Ethical quandaries loom large in the realm of documentary filmmaking, particularly in the portrayal of such deeply entrenched conflicts. Journalists tasked with navigating such perilous terrain delve into a task that demands not just factual reporting, but a profound consideration of ethical implications.
Central to the ethical discourse surrounding the reporting on the Israel and Palestine conflict is the imperative of accuracy and proportionality in presenting differing perspectives. The delicate balance between journalistic integrity and sensitivity towards those embroiled in the conflict weighs heavily on the shoulders of documentary producers tasked with navigating a terrain fraught with ethical dilemmas.
Yet, even in the pursuit of truth, the specter of sensationalism and questionable journalistic integrity loom large. While it has its own merits, the documentary, as we will soon see, succumbs to the temptation of enhancing viewer perspective through manipulative editing, perpetuating a myopic understanding of the conflict that serves Western interests.
In addition, the narrative unfolds with the documentary laying bare the foundational premise of the Oslo Accords, charting the course towards the independent destinies of Palestine and Israel. Yet, largely unmentioned in the documentary is a historical backdrop stretching back from the aftermath of World War I, where the specter of Zionist colonialism loomed large.
Our video analysis endeavors to dissect the ethical intricacies of the Israel and Palestine conflict as portrayed in the documentary.
Through a critical lens, we aim to unravel the layers of Zionist colonialism and the perpetuation of the white savior narrative crafted within this documentary. So with that said, let's get it started.
Now, don't get us wrong, it still upheld some crucial ethical principles when it comes to reporting significant events in media, the accuracy of the timeline, as well as transparency regarding the extensive damage, deaths, and violence as consequences of the war.
Right off the bat, the documentary provided a constant context of how the ongoing war between Palestine and Israel intensified, the signing of the Oslo Accords in 1993, the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin in 1995, the bombings and violent protests, signing of the Sharm el-Sheikh Memorandum in 1999, and how the conflict continued up until the year of 2002. It highlighted some crucial events that catalyzed the bloodshed and the people suffering without extracting the necessary information.
Aside from that, the documentary was also not afraid to show the unfiltered damage of war. It did not sugarcoat or downplay the destruction as clips of the raw emotions of citizens, broken infrastructure from armed attacks, and the deaths from every angle were included, not because they wanted to glamorize the video, but to be transparent of the immense impact of war on the nations, the people, and the world, and that political decisions play a crucial role on a nation's wealth. Holding both ethical principles, the documentary provided a semblance of truth and integrity, providing context to citizens outside Israel and Palestine, and it is also critical to incite discussions to further broaden the public's knowledge.
With that said, however, its faults are simply too fraught to ignore. The primary ethical issue faced in reporting the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, as depicted in the documentary, is the challenge of maintaining impartiality and fairness. After all, the conflict is deeply rooted in historical, political, and cultural context. And as such, personal biases, societal pressures, or political agendas can easily influence any reporting on it. On one hand, the documentary does try to present multiple perspectives on the conflict, featuring interviews with key figures from both sides of the negotiating table. So basically, this suggests an attempt to provide a balanced view of the conflict.
However, we would argue that the documentary leans heavily toward a white savior perspective that is, in many ways, apologetic to the Zionist occupation of Palestine. The perceived bias raises question about the documentary's impartiality and fairness, suggesting that the ethical issue may not have been fully resolved. To be more specific, we have identified several ethical considerations that were overlooked in the reporting of this issue in the documentary.
The first ethical consideration is the lack of contextual depth. The documentary provides a comprehensive account of the Oslo Accords and their aftermath, but it fails to delve into the historical and political context that led to that conflict. The omission of key historical events such as the Balfour Declaration, the British Mandate, and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians during the Nakba and the Naksa results in a skewed narrative that does not fully represent the complexities of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is at its core a conflict driven by Zionist settler colonialism and Western imperialism. It must be emphasized that the documentary falls into the trap of presenting this conflict as a war between religious beliefs, as within its approximately 1.5-hour runtime, Zionism, a political endeavor separate from that of Judaism, and the primary driving force for the ongoing occupation of Palestine was never mentioned. Conflating Zionism with Judaism has been one of the modus operandi of the Israeli government since its inception, as this allows them to shut down any criticism of the Israeli occupation of Palestine and the apartheid conditions Palestinians and even non-white Jews in Israel are forced to deal with as anti-Semitic. In addition, framing the U.S. as a neutral third-figure peacemaker neglects the long and storied history of the Israel as the primary imperial outpost of the U.S. in the Middle East. For instance, the U.S. government has long viewed their unwavering support of Israel as an investment. Here's Joe Biden saying those exact words.
It's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region.
The second ethical consideration is the imbalance in representation. The documentary features interviews with key figures from both sides of the conflict. However, there is a noticeable imbalance in the representation of the two sides. The most glaring instance of this is the fact that the two sides of the conflict are presented as equals, neglecting the intense power dynamic between the two. And as such, their actions and reactions are also presented to be of equal proportion to one another. A prime instance of this would be how the documentary framed the rejection of Yasser Arafat, then leader of Palestine, of the proposed two-state permanent status agreement with former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak that urged Palestine to cede control of airspace to Israelis, allow enclaves of Israeli settlements within Palestinian land, and allow Israel to border them with the Egyptians, a longtime ally of Israel, as losing his best opportunity at an independent Palestine. This also extends toward the civilians on both sides, with Palestinian civilians who bear the brunt of the occupation and conflict being presented the same way as Israeli civilians who, by all means, are conferred greater respect to their human and civil rights than their counterparts on the other side. The third ethical consideration is sensationalism. The documentary employs dramatic editing and sound design to enhance the viewer's experience. While this is a common practice in filmmaking, it can lead to sensationalism, distorting the reality of the conflict and potentially manipulating the viewer's perception. Disregarding these ethical considerations has several effects. Firstly, it results in a narrative that does not fully represent the complexities of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. These could lead viewers to form opinions based on incomplete information. Secondly, it potentially manipulates the viewer's perception of the conflict, reinforcing existing biases and stereotypes. Lastly, it undermines the documentary's credibility as a source of information on the conflict. These considerations highlight the importance of ethical principles in media reporting, and their disregard can have significant implications.
In conclusion, while Shattered Dreams of Peace, Israeli-Palestinian Relations After Oslo by Dan Seton and Torben Mayer certainly endeavors to uphold ethical standards in media reporting by providing a comprehensive timeline and unfiltered depiction of the war's devastation, its portrayal of the Israel and Palestine conflict is not without its shortcomings. Foremost among these is the lack of contextual depth, failing to adequately explore the historical and political roots of the conflict. Further, the imbalance in representation between the two sides of the conflict undermines the documentary's impartiality. By failing to address or to acknowledge the power dynamics at play, the documentary misrepresents the realities faced by Palestinians under the Zionist occupation. And finally, the use of sensationalist techniques raises ethical questions about the manipulation of viewer perception.
In failing to address these ethical considerations, the documentary not only falls short of providing a nuanced understanding of the Israel and Palestine conflict, but also risks undermining its credibility as a source of information. As consumers of media, it is imperative that we remain critical of the narratives presented to us and demand adherence to the ethical standards in reporting. Only then can we hope to move towards a more informed and just discourse surrounding these pressing societal issues. Ethical Exposé out.